Hello, folks. Dustin Zarni here. Welcome to Commissioner Carr. Today is Monday, April 21st. And sorry, I'm on a 2-week delay here. I missed last week. So it was important to me not to miss this week. And I really have to just keep with this Monday schedule because when I missed the last week on Monday, I said, I'll do it later in the week because there's some things going on. And later in the week got very crazy. And so I wasn't able to do the Commissioner Carr. So now I'm doing it Monday. You may notice if you're watching the video, I'm not in a car. I'm in a hotel room. And that's because I'm attending the Election Assistance Commission annual meeting for the local leadership council. I'm not going to be talking much about that today because it just started. Today was our travel day. We had regional meetings. Tomorrow's the meet of the EAC LLC schedule. And, you know, I'm on this committee. I'm one of 2 New York representatives, and it affords me a great amount of time with other election officials across this nation. But tomorrow we're going to be talking about the presidential executive order and how it's going to affect the EAC. We're going to get some insight on it. So next Monday, I'm going to fill you in on that. But today I wanted to talk about hearings. 2 weeks ago when I did Commissioner Carr, I talked about objections. Now we're in the hearing phase. Specific objections, well, let's go back. A recap. When candidates want to run for office in New York, they have to file petitions. We're in what's called the designating petition window. That means these are the windows of the people that are running for office for the Democrat, Republican, working families, or conservative. There are some towns that do caucuses and not petitions, and they'll happen later on this summer. But this is how most of the people get on the ballot. Well, when you turn in petitions, there's a presumption of validity with the Board of Elections, and it's up to other people to do objections on them. Those objections I talked about 2 weeks ago. And what happens is when general objections come in, they turn into specific objections. When specific objections come in, the boards of elections have to do preliminary findings, and then they hold hearings. And that's what's going on now. That's what we had last week that got me so busy. And that's what's going on this week. Even though I'm in North Carolina for this meeting, we have some hearings going on that one I didn't have to attend, the other I'm recused from. And I'll talk about that in a little bit. So last week, we had 5 different hearings. We had a hearing for Salina's 2nd Ward councilor where the Republican candidate survived all the objections. He stayed on the ballot by having the exact number of signatures needed to stay on the ballot. So he came in with about 20 over and it went down to the exact number of signatures. But that's all you need. He needed 84, he stayed on. I think his last name is Prisbilek, Aaron Prisbilek, running on the Republican side. There was another hearing that is actually going to 2 different hearings now. The first hearing was at the Board of Elections last Wednesday, and that was for against Tammy Honeywell, who's running for as a Democrat for the county ledge 8th in a primary against Chad Ryan. And there was objections placed against her petitions. Those objections were, a lot of the objections were overruled by the Board of Elections, and some of those were containing voter fraud. And the Board of Elections does not rule on voter fraud. We are not an evidentiary court. We can't put people under oath. We can't do that. So we can't take that kind of evidence in. And that has to go to a court hearing, which happened today. So there was a court hearing today, or at least an order to show cause at the court regarding whether voter fraud is happening in that case. The voter fraud is not the standard voter fraud that's being alleged. It's being alleged that people signed the Tammy Honeywell petition and they didn't know that there was a primary on this and that there was another Democratic candidate. I don't think I've ever seen a case like this in the sense of usually voter fraud means that somebody signed for somebody else, or they signed for somebody who wasn't there, or that kind of thing. That's usually, when it comes to petition fraud, that's usually what they're looking at. But the judge, I was not at that hearing, our attorney was, because the board is neutral, and I already had this commitment for the federal government here. That hearing happened today. The judge decided to withhold any judgment right away on whether they're going to even hold a hearing on this, or go to an evidentiary hearing, or whether he's going to rule whether we even need a hearing on it. So we'll be waiting on that. Another hearing, 3 other hearings that we had last Thursday made the news. Those 3 hearings were about whether Alfonso Davis, Jimmy Oliver made the ballot for mayor for Syracuse Democrat. A third hearing was for Martin Cass, who is a Republican running for Common Council District 4. The board, meaning the Board of Elections, myself and Commissioner Kevin Ryan, ruled all 3 candidates did not meet the valid number of minimum signatures due to the objections that were lodged, and they were taken off the ballot. So they will not appear on the ballot. Mr. Oliver, Mr. Davis will not appear on the ballot for the Democratic primary for mayor. There are still 3 Democrats running for mayor on the Democratic primary: Sherry Owens, Pat Hogan, and Chomajok. And again, I am neutral in all primaries. I'm going to say it as fact because it is fact. Anybody saying otherwise is usually an aggrieved candidate. No one likes to take people off the ballot. It's not something that we try to do. In fact, we have a presumption of validity here at the board. But in those 3 cases, after the objections were lodged and after we were able to see whether the objections were rightful, they had under the primary amount, and they were taken off the ballot. So this week we have some hearings left to go, because once Board of Elections hearings happen, then court cases usually follow shortly after. And as I said, today was a court case for Tammy Honeywell at order to show cause. They had their initial hearing today. Then later tomorrow, a Board of Elections hearing is happening for conservative Assembly District 126 judicial delegate. You may remember a couple weeks ago, I said that I recused myself out of that hearing because one of the candidates is Matthew Beadnell. And once a general objection came in, before even seeing specific objections, Mr. Beadnell and I have a long history, and I felt it was proper, and the best course of action was to recuse myself from any hearing on this, and I have appointed an acting deputy to act in my stead there. They're going to have a hearing tomorrow about whether whether that petition will survive the objections. I haven't even read the objections, so when I recuse, I recuse. So they're going to have that tomorrow. There is a hearing on Thursday morning. I've actually changed travel plans to come back for this one. And this was for the County Legislature 9. You may have seen this in the paper. There is a hearing that is happening Thursday morning at the Board of Elections, and then Friday afternoon in court. Same allegations. The Board of Elections hasn't ruled on this yet, so I'm not going to tell you any preliminary findings. We're going to have that hearing on Thursday, and then the Board of Elections will, defer to the court, because there's a court hearing the next day. This happens especially when objections are filed late. We didn't get these until the last possible day to get them, and the court proceedings usually start within 2 weeks of filing especially if you're trying to knock somebody off the ballot, 2 weeks within the last filing day. So all of that had to happen at the same time. But the board will be acting before the court acts, and then the court will be able to decide whether the board acted properly, or if there's things that the board cannot rule on, the court will rule on. So that is what will be happening with County Ledge 9. And then there's one last hearing scheduled for next Monday. It was supposed to be this Friday, but because of the other court proceeding, it's going to be next Monday. Town and Cicero Republican slates, they're battling. There's 2 Republican slates, and one is objected to the other ones. And we're having that hearing on Monday afternoon, the 28th. So we are in the middle of all. Now, if we throw a candidate off the ballot, they have 72 hours to go to court to say that we did it wrong. So some of these Board of Elections hearings that don't have court dates, like Cicero, like tomorrow's hearing on 8126, if the board rules them off the ballot, they may eventually turn into court hearings as well. Back. Sorry, I paused there for a second. So we are working through all these hearings because by May 1st, we have to certify the ballot, determine early voting locations for anywhere where there's a primary, election day polling locations for anywhere there's a primary, and start actually designing the ballots. So we're going to be hard at work this week, hard at work next week to get that done. We don't have to design the ballot by May 1st. We have to just determine what the ballot is going to be. And then we'll be working shortly after that because about 40 days before the primary, we like to get out vote by mail ballots. So that's happening. As I said this week, today and tomorrow and Wednesday, I'm at the Election Assistance Commission Local Leadership Council annual meeting. I'm one of 2 representatives from New York. There's 2 from every state, 1 Democrat, 1 Republican. And I've been on this for 3 years now. This is when their annual meeting is. I planned for this all year. If there was a live court case going on, I would probably come back, but there's not. Though a hearing that's happening tomorrow that I'm recused from actually was scheduled for last week, but one of the petitioners petitioned Commissioner Ryan to delay it, and they're having it while I'm gone because I don't need to be there. I don't want to be there anyway. I'm recused, and I did that voluntarily. So they're going to have that hearing while I'm gone, but the Board of Elections is still working. I'm looking forward to this Election Assistance Commission meeting because tomorrow's agenda, today was regional meetings, which was great. We got to meet and talk. They're basically New England and the Northeast corner is part of a region. A lot of commissioners sat down and talked. We also got together with our West Coast brethren and talked about things as well. A lot of the challenges from last year, a lot of the things that we want the EAC, which is the Elections Assistance Commission, to help us with. And it's not always just funding, although sometimes a lot of it's funding. But I think tomorrow is going to be an interesting discussion because we're going to talk about the president's executive order. You may remember me talking about this. This is an executive order that directly affects the EAC. It's directed at the EAC. There's questions about whether that's legal, whether the president can do this executive order, because the EAC is not an executive branch department. Is a department created by Congress under the Help America Vote Act. So I'm interested in hearing from the commissioners about how they plan to handle this, and I don't know how much they can say because it's in litigation, not just by them, but I don't think it's them, actually. I think it's the 19 Democratic Attorney Generals, the DNC, and a lot of other, and some of the good government groups have already brought this executive order to task. But we're going to hear from them tomorrow about what the status is of that and how it's going to affect local county boards and what they need from us as well. So I'm looking forward to that. I guess I should say, when I go on these conferences, it's never really paid for by Onondaga County taxpayers. The only conferences that Onondaga County pays for are our training conferences with the New York State Board of Elections and the New York State Elections Commissioner Association. Those happen in January, and another one will happen in August. Those are our main training conferences. So that's why the county pays for those, because we're traveling to get training. When I go on these other things like the Partnership for Large Election Jurisdictions, Faces of Democracy for Issue 1, or the Election Assistance Commission, the Onondaga County taxpayers don't pay for it. I use my own time, even though I don't really have time. It's a long story on that. But I'm basically doing it instead of being off, And I'm never really I don't really schedule these. They're scheduled by these larger organizations. These are national organizations. I'm honored to be a part of it. I think it's worthy of my work and my time away from my family, and it also brings back a lot of knowledge to not just Onondaga County, but New York as a whole, because usually when I'm in these national organizations, I'm one of two from New York that is part of that. So, or a few from New York that is part of that. So that's why I go on these. And I also want to, this year, I think it's even better that I'm here, because I'm going to find out a little bit more about this executive order and the future of the EAC under this current administration. So I'm looking forward to that. So next week, we got some court hearings later this week. And we got some Board of Elections hearings. We should be done by Monday. And then knowing where the primaries are, deciding where the early voting spots are going to be, and also our election day polling places. So that's all that stuff that's going to keep happening. So stay here. I'm going to bring you the news as it happens. Next week on Commissioner in the Car, I'll probably be back in the car, and we'll have a wrap-up of all of the hearings and any future court proceedings, and also a definitive list of where the primaries are and where the board is looking to hold early voting and all of that. So that's going to come next week. I don't know if I will get to a weekly walk later this week. As I said, I'm traveling and there's a lot of court dates, but we'll see if I can get to it and get back on schedule. So if I did, it would be Common Council District 1 in the city of Syracuse. That's what I'd be focusing on, Syracuse, until primary day in June. Thank you very much, and enjoy your day. Bye-bye.